Under one green roof, the leading decision makers in the clean energy and carbon markets are meeting. And Elliott's gone there for us as well. Elliott.
Morning, Rish. Yes, well, under this green roof, you can see we're in the ballroom of a rather empty, posh hotel right now. But certainly later this morning, it's going to be teeming with some 300 movers and shakers, investors and policymakers from the world of new energy finance will be meeting here. And who better to discuss that with me than the Chief Executive of Bloomberg New Energy Finance, Michael Liebreich. Thanks so much for joining me this morning. What's the purpose of this gathering?
What we're doing is we're bringing here 300 of the leading players, the decision makers in clean energy. So renewable energy, energy efficiency, the smart grid, all of these different technologies that will shift the world to a low carbon energy. You need policymakers in the room, you need executives of the supply industries in the room, you need investors in the room, and that's what we do once a year. We bring them all together to discuss the state of the industry.
But it's a pretty bleak outlook, is it not, for new energy right now? We've had, the Copenhagen summit not failing to reach a unanimous accord. We've got Obama's energy bill stalled in the Senate. We've got recession. All of these factors can't be boding well for this sector, new energy finance. Well,
yeah, it's certainly, you'd think the outlook should look pretty grim. But in fact, we just, we've pulled together the figures for investment for 2009. It's a very traumatic year in the industry and for the economy as a whole. Investment volumes were only down about 6% on 2008. We thought it was going to be much worse. Now, what happened at Copenhagen, in fact, all of the things that were supposed to happen in Copenhagen in the developed world, they're actually enshrined in national legislation. So the EU, America, Japan, China, India, Brazil, South Africa are all moving ahead with clean energy despite Copenhagen. So investment levels actually holding up, and there's lots of other things driving the industry forwards. So it's not as grim as you might think.
But certainly in some parts of the developing world, we've got the clean development mechanism, which allows for, say, a steel company here to invest in a new renewable energy project in the developing world to gain carbon credits to offset its emissions here. I mean, there's no extension or replacement for what's in the Kyoto Protocol, which expires in 2012. So after that, it's looking pretty uncertain, isn't it?
But remember, the clean development mechanism under Kyoto only takes money from the developed world to invest in certain countries in the developing world. So China doesn't need that money, and Brazil doesn't need that money. So it's really, it is very bad for places like India or Egypt or some of Latin America and Africa, because that source of funding is under threat. Nobody really knows, how it's going to go forwards. But other than that, there's just enormous amounts of money. It's $150 billion a year being invested in Europe, in North America, in Japan, in China, around the world. So it's only a small piece which is actually under that sort of uncertainty.
And in terms of the renewable energy sector, I found quite fascinating one of the points, 50% drop in the price of solar energy,
That's right.
and on track to be sustainable with normal electricity in sunny parts of the world within a few years' time. I mean, what's behind these kind of price drops?
So what happens over the last few years, you saw enormous amounts of money being spent on renewable energy. There was this real surge between sort of 2006 and 2008, and it kind of swamped the supply side of the industry, couldn't keep up with demand, and so prices for these technologies went up. And a lot of investment went onto the supply side, but it takes some time to work its way through. Suddenly the balance changes because there's a little bit less demand in terms of a little bit less money for the projects, and now the investments come through on the supply side, so the price balance is shifting.
Michael, we're going to have to end it there. Thanks so much for joining us. That was Michael Liebreich, Chief Executive of Bloomberg New Energy Finance.